It's funny, the things you remember most vividly after a truly devastating moment. For me, it wasn't just the shock of what happened. It was the slow, chilling realization that almost everyone around me had known. That I'd been living in a curated ignorance, a kind of carefully constructed illusion, while the people I trusted most casually carried this secret, watching my life unfold toward a predetermined end. That, I think, was the deepest cut. More than the betrayal itself. It all started, really, on a warm late June afternoon. I was 34, standing at my own grill in the backyard of the house I'd poured my soul into, flipping burgers. My wife, Chloe, had just gotten a big promotion to senior account manager at her marketing firm uptown Charlotte. So, naturally, we were throwing a barbecue. A celebration. We had maybe 20 people there, mostly her coworkers, a handful of my own crew, friends. My business partner, Mark, was there with his wife, Sarah. My sister, Rachel, had shown up early to help prep everything. I'd spent the whole morning setting up tables, stringing bistro lights, stocking coolers with ice-cold beer. Chloe was buzzing around in this sundress I'd never seen, laughing louder than usual, and I just thought she was happy, you know? Proud. Mark and I run a small landscaping company, and honestly, up until that moment, I genuinely believed I had everything figured out. Chloe and I had been married for 9 years. We owned this beautiful house in Charlotte that I'd renovated almost entirely by myself. From the outside, we probably looked like that couple everyone wanted to be. We hadn't had kids yet because Chloe always said she wanted to focus on her career first. She was ambitious, and I respected that. Figured we had time. I trusted her completely. Never once checked her phone. Never questioned where she was. Never had that nagging doubt. Looking back now, I see that wasn't trust at all. That was just me being completely, utterly oblivious. So, there I was, tongs in hand, watching burgers sizzle, listening to the murmur of conversations and laughter, thinking, yeah, this is it. This is exactly the life I worked for. Then Brittany showed up. Around 2 in the afternoon, already a little tipsy. Not unusual for Brittany, Chloe's best friend since college. She had this reputation for being the messy friend, the one who said whatever was on her mind after a few drinks. She prided herself on brutal honesty, which really just meant she was rude and blamed it on alcohol. She walked straight to the cooler, grabbed a beer, and then posted up right next to the grill where I was working. I could actually smell vodka on her breath when she leaned in, asking how the burgers were coming along. She stood there, swaying ever so slightly, watching me. And then she said it. "Has Chloe told you about Kevin yet?" I paused, spatula midair. Kevin? I had no idea who Kevin was. What do you mean? I asked, looking up from the grill. Brittany laughed this sharp, bitter sound. Oh, she really hasn't told you. She took a long, slow drink from her beer, then looked around, subtly checking who was listening. Then, she raised her voice just enough that conversations nearby started to die down. When are you finally going to leave her? It wasn't even a question. It was almost an accusation. I stood there, tongs still in my hand, smoke curling up behind me. Mark heard it from across the yard, started walking towards us, a frown on his face. Rachel, my sister, stopped mid-sentence with someone and turned to stare. The people standing closest to us just went completely silent. What are you talking about, Brittany? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite the sudden chill running through me. She tilted her head, like I was a child who just wasn't grasping something obvious. You mean you don't know? I don't know anything, I said. That's when her eyes went wide. She looked genuinely scared for a second. She clapped a hand over her mouth, a hushed whisper escaping, "Wait, he doesn't know." I heard someone gasp. Just then, Chloe came out the back door, carrying a tray of fresh buns. She took one look at the scene, Brittany standing next to me, everyone staring in silence, and the tray just slipped from her hands. It crashed onto the deck, ceramic shattering, buns scattering everywhere. Chloe just froze. I looked from my wife's panicked face back to Brittany, then back to Chloe. What am I supposed to know? Brittany glanced at Chloe, then back at me. Kevin from the office. They'd been together and she trailed off, not needing to finish. The truth was written all over Chloe's face. She was absolutely panicked, and she started walking toward me with her hands held up, almost pleading. I kept my eyes locked on her. Is it true? She opened her mouth, nothing coming out at first. Then, a choked sound. We should talk inside. No, I said, my voice firm, not yelling, but it carried. We can talk right here. Since apparently everyone else already knew. Chloe started crying, mascara running down her face. She looked at Brittany. You had no right. Brittany just shrugged. Somebody needed to tell him. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new information to anyone but me. I looked around at the faces in my backyard. Chloe's coworkers, people I'd fed and entertained, people I'd shared laughs with all afternoon. I saw guilt. Discomfort. Evasion. They knew. All of them. How long? I asked Chloe. She shook her head, muttering, we need privacy. I raised my voice again, just a little. Answer the question, Chloe. She looked down at the broken plate, then whispered, 8 months. 8 months. I'd spent the last 8 months planning our 10th anniversary trip. Working extra jobs, saving for a bigger house for us. 8 months. And the entire time, she'd been sleeping with someone else. Rachel grabbed my arm, her voice gentle, suggesting we go inside. Mark started trying to herd guests toward the front yard, mumbling apologies. But I stopped them. Everyone, I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. Stay right where you are. If this is happening, it's happening with witnesses. Chloe started begging. She said not to do this. Said we could work it out. Said it was a mistake. Do you love him? I asked. She didn't answer. Which, of course, was an answer in itself. That's when Brittany, bless her drunken heart, piped up again. She was talking to a divorce attorney 3 weeks ago. Asking about asset division. My blood ran cold. This wasn't some impulsive mistake. This was a plan. I pulled out my phone right there. In front of everyone. Texted Brenda, my attorney. Told her I needed an emergency meeting first thing Monday. Told her I wanted the most aggressive divorce possible. Chloe saw me typing. What are you doing? She whispered, her voice laced with panic. You have until the end of the day, I told her, my voice flat. Pack your things and get out. You can figure out where to go, but you're not sleeping under my roof tonight. Rachel started to say, David, maybe you should think this through, but I cut her off. Just then, a car pulled up out front. Someone called Chloe's name. One of her coworkers went to check and came back, saying it was Kevin. Apparently, Chloe had texted him during the confrontation. He came around the side, looking confused, and when he saw Chloe crying, he started toward her. I stepped between them. Get off my property, I said. Mark grabbed my shoulders, telling me it wasn't worth it. Kevin backed up, mumbling he didn't want trouble. I watched him get back into his car and drive away while Chloe sobbed. I walked inside, grabbed my laptop and a few work files. Threw some clothes into a duffel bag. Walked past everyone without another word. Got into my truck and drove to a hotel in Gastonia. Checked in, sat on the edge of the bed. My phone immediately started blowing up with texts from Chloe, from Rachel, from people who'd been at the party. I just turned it off. Stared at the blank wall. 9 years gone. In one drunken confession. At a barbecue I'd spent all morning preparing for. That night, I just lay there, going through every memory of the past 8 months. The mandatory business trip Chloe took to Raleigh in March. The girls' nights that suddenly became more frequent. The way she'd started keeping her phone face down on the table, always. All these little things I'd brushed off, explained away. Now they clicked into place. A pattern of lying. Of sneaking around. Around 6 in the morning, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately started buzzing. Chloe had sent 43 texts, ranging from apologies to anger to begging me to come home. Rachel had sent a dozen, asking if I was okay. Mark sent one that just said, "I have your back, man." I ignored them all. The second Brenda's office opened on Monday morning, I called. Brenda had handled the legal paperwork when I started my landscaping company, and I trusted her. She was sharp, didn't waste time. I met her at her office in South End by 8:30 and laid everything out. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she asked if I had any proof beyond Brittany's confession. I told her I had 20 witnesses who heard Chloe not deny it. And Brittany had mentioned Chloe already consulting a divorce attorney, which meant she'd been planning this. Brenda nodded. "Good," she said, "but we need more. Documentation. Messages. Anything that proves she was strategically positioning herself to leave with half of everything you've built." I told Brenda about the house, how I'd bought it as a fixer-upper before we married, and spent 3 years renovating it, mostly with my own labor. How the landscaping business was something I'd started from nothing. Chloe had contributed financially once she started making good money, sure, but the foundation of everything came from my work, my hands. Brenda asked about joint accounts, shared assets. That's when I realized Chloe had access to everything, our savings, the business account, even the credit cards tied to my company expenses. "We need to protect your assets today, David, not tomorrow," Brenda said. We spent the next 2 hours going through financial documents. Brenda made calls, freezing joint accounts, setting up new ones in just my name. She contacted my bank, got them to flag any large withdrawals or transfers from our shared savings, and helped me move my business funds into a completely separate account Chloe couldn't touch. She also drafted a formal separation agreement and said we needed to serve Chloe with divorce papers as soon as possible. Brenda asked if I wanted to try mediation or go straight to litigation. Aggressive, I told her. She's already shown she's willing to plan behind my back. Brenda started outlining our strategy. We'd file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. We'd fight for me to keep the house based on my pre-marriage ownership and renovation investment. We'd argue the business was mine, founded before the marriage. The tricky part was Chloe's name was on the house title because I'd added her after we got married, thinking it was the right thing to do. Brenda said that complicated things, but wasn't impossible, especially if we could prove I'd put significantly more into the property. I pulled up records showing I'd paid the down payment from my own savings. I'd done most of the renovation work myself, saving tens of thousands in contractor costs. Chloe's only real contribution had been helping with mortgage payments the last 4 years. Brenda said we'd need receipts for materials, permits I'd pulled, anything showing my personal investment. I told her I kept all that stuff, obsessively, for my business. She actually smiled. "That's going to save you," she said. By the time I left Brenda's office, it was almost noon, and I had a plan. I drove straight to Rachel's townhome. I just needed to talk to someone who wasn't a lawyer. She opened the door, looking worried, and immediately hugged me. We sat in her kitchen, and she made coffee while I explained everything Brenda had said. Rachel listened, then asked if I was sure I didn't want to at least hear Chloe out. Maybe counseling? I told her Chloe had been planning this for months, had only gotten caught because her drunk friend had a big mouth. There was nothing to hear out. Rachel said she understood, but she was worried about me making permanent decisions while angry. "I'm not angry anymore," I told her. "I'm done." There's a difference between being pissed off and being completely finished with someone. My phone rang. It was Mark. He asked if I wanted to meet up. I met him at a brewery in Matthews, middle of a weekday afternoon. He'd already ordered me a beer by the time I sat down. He asked how I was holding up, and I gave him the short version about Brenda and filing for divorce. Mark nodded, then said something I wasn't expecting. He told me Sarah had known. His wife had known about the affair for about a month because one of Chloe's coworkers had mentioned it at some work event. Sarah had been trying to figure out how to tell me without blowing up my life. Mark apologized for his wife keeping it from me. I told him it wasn't his fault. At least now I knew the truth. Mark asked if I needed anything, and I said what I really needed was to know who else had been aware of this. Mark said he'd ask around quietly. Then he told me something else interesting. Kevin had a reputation at Chloe's firm for this kind of thing. He'd been through a messy separation from his own wife, Lisa, about 6 months ago, over similar issues. Apparently, they were still in the middle of their divorce proceedings. So Chloe had picked a guy who was already destroying his own marriage to help destroy mine. Mark suggested Lisa might be worth talking to since she'd been through Kevin's patterns before. I went back to the hotel that night. An email from Brenda was waiting for me. Divorce papers were ready, and we could serve Chloe on Wednesday. She'd also managed to get me an emergency hearing to establish temporary orders protecting my business assets and preventing either of us from selling or mortgaging the house without court approval. My phone buzzed with another text from Chloe, saying we needed to talk about the house and money. I didn't respond. From now on, everything went through lawyers. Chloe got served with divorce papers at her office on Wednesday. According to Brenda's process server, she'd made a scene, crying in front of her coworkers, before locking herself in a conference room. Brenda called me that afternoon. Chloe's attorney, Diane, had already reached out, trying to negotiate. Chloe was panicking. The temporary orders had gone through, and the judge had frozen all major assets pending the divorce proceedings. Chloe had moved in with another coworker, Rachel told me, not Brittany, interestingly enough. I told my sister I didn't want updates about Chloe's life. The next 2 weeks were a blur of documentation and meetings with Brenda. We built our case, focusing on my pre-marriage ownership of the house, my personal investment in renovations, and the fact that my landscaping business existed independently of the marriage. Brenda had me pull together every receipt from the house projects, every permit, every invoice for materials I'd purchased over 3 years of renovations. I found boxes of paperwork showing I'd spent close to $80,000 in materials alone, not counting the hundreds of hours I'd put in doing the work myself. Brenda said if we valued my labor at even a modest contractor rate, we could argue I'd invested well over $200,000 into a property I'd bought before marrying Chloe. Brenda also subpoenaed Chloe's phone records and work emails through Discovery. That's when things got truly interesting. The phone records showed months of calls and texts between Chloe and Kevin. But more importantly, they showed calls to 3 different divorce attorneys, starting back in February. Chloe had been planning to leave me for at least 4 months before Brittany's confession. Which meant the promotion celebration, the barbecue, all of it, had been a performance. She was positioning herself to exit the marriage on her terms. Brenda found emails between Chloe and one of those attorneys discussing asset valuation and strategies for claiming half the business. There was even a spreadsheet Chloe had made, listing everything we owned with estimated values. She'd been calculating what she could take, right down to the furniture in my truck. This wasn't a woman who'd made a mistake. This was someone who'd been methodically planning to gut me financially while pretending everything was fine. Then Brenda did something I hadn't expected. She reached out to Lisa, Kevin's wife, through her attorney. Turns out, Lisa was more than willing to talk. She was dealing with her own divorce from Kevin and had her own evidence of his pattern of affairs. Lisa provided a statement detailing how Kevin had done this before, how he cheated on her with at least 2 other married women from his workplace, and how he specifically targeted women in relationships because he got off on the drama and destruction. Brenda used this to paint a picture not just of Chloe's calculated planning, but of Kevin as a serial homewrecker who'd pursued my wife as part of a pattern. It wasn't about Chloe being special or their connection being real. It was about Kevin collecting married women like trophies, and Chloe being naive enough to fall for it. Brenda used all of this in our court filings, arguing that Chloe had acted in bad faith, had hidden her intentions while gathering financial information, and shouldn't be rewarded for strategic deception. Diane tried to counter, saying Chloe had every right to consult attorneys and protect her interests, but the timeline made Chloe look calculated and dishonest. We had our first hearing in early August. I sat in that courtroom, watching Chloe testify about her contributions to the marriage, about how she deserved half of everything. She was wearing this conservative dress, looking like the victim, and Diane asked her questions designed to make it sound like she'd been an equal partner who'd sacrificed her own career growth to support my business. It was complete fiction. Chloe had always prioritized her marketing job, and I'd built my company on my own time, working nights and weekends. Then Brenda got her turn. It was brutal. She pulled up the phone records showing when Chloe had first contacted Kevin, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Almost poetic in its twistedness. She showed the timeline of Chloe consulting divorce attorneys while still sleeping next to me every night, still letting me plan our anniversary trip, still accepting the renovations I was doing on our house. Brenda asked Chloe directly if she'd made the asset spreadsheet, and Chloe had to admit she had. When Brenda asked why she needed that if she wasn't planning to divorce me, Chloe stammered something about wanting to understand our financial position. It sounded weak, and the judge's expression made it clear he wasn't buying it. Brenda finished by asking if Chloe had ever told me she was unhappy or suggested counseling before starting her affair. Chloe admitted she hadn't. The judge didn't make a final ruling that day, but he granted me continued sole access to the business accounts and indicated he was concerned about Chloe's credibility given the documented timeline of her planning. We had another hearing scheduled for late September to finalize asset division, but Brenda felt confident we'd won the important battle. Chloe's attorney tried one more negotiation attempt, offering to accept 30% of assets if we settled immediately. I told Brenda, absolutely not. We're going all the way. The final hearing happened on a Friday in late September, lasting almost 4 hours. The judge had reviewed everything, all the documentation about the house, my business records, Chloe's planning timeline, witness statements from the barbecue, including a written account from Brittany, who apparently felt guilty enough to help our side, and Lisa's testimony about Kevin's pattern. When the judge read his decision, he was clear about his reasoning. The house was awarded to me, based on my pre-marriage purchase and substantial personal investment in renovations. My business remained solely mine since it existed before and independent of the marriage. And Chloe was entitled to a small settlement, representing her contribution to mortgage payments over 4 years. It came out to about $40,000. Nowhere near the half of everything she'd been planning to take. The judge specifically mentioned her documented preparation to file for divorce while concealing her intentions as a factor in his decision, saying the court didn't reward strategic deception. Chloe started crying. Diane tried to argue, but the judge said his decision was final. I walked out of that courthouse, and Brenda told me the house would be legally mine once the paperwork processed. I thought about that for maybe 10 seconds before deciding I was selling it. I didn't want to live in a place that reminded me of Chloe every single day. I listed it 2 weeks later. It sold fast because the neighborhood was desirable, and I'd done quality work on the renovations. I made a solid profit, even after paying Chloe her settlement. I used part of it to expand my landscaping business and bought a smaller place across town that was just mine. Rachel introduced me to her friend Sophie in November, and we started seeing each other casually. I wasn't ready for anything serious, and Sophie understood that, but it was nice having someone to talk to who didn't know anything about my disaster marriage. My business grew because word got around about my work ethic and the quality renovations I could do. I heard through Rachel that Chloe and Kevin had moved in together. Honestly, I didn't care. They deserved each other. Brittany sent me an apology text around Christmas, saying she knew she'd blown up my life, but she'd thought I deserved to know the truth. I actually thanked her. She was right. Living in ignorance while Chloe planned to destroy me would have been worse than the public humiliation of finding out at a barbecue. At least this way, I'd gotten ahead of it and protected what mattered. I still don't trust easily. And I probably won't for a long time. But I learned that sometimes, the worst thing that can happen to you is also the thing that saves you from wasting more years on the wrong person. That deep cut of realizing everyone knew? It also became the catalyst that forced me to take decisive action, to fight for what was mine. Given everything, how much do you think we truly know about the people closest to us, even when we think we trust them implicitly?